And back, folks. Here we go. Yeah, another installment for top 5 greatest players in each NBA franchise's history. This one, we're on the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, at the last team, the Lakers, the theme was there were so many great players, there were numerous Hall of Famers as honorable mentions. In this one with the Grizzlies, the theme is they only really had one great era. Got several players from that era where they were on the cusp of winning a championship, but they didn't quite follow through. So there's going to be several players from that era of the Grizzlies. And now the current era looks like they're getting back into championship contention with a few young pieces. But with that being said, let's just start with a few honorable mentions. We're going to start with Bryant Reeves, the very first draft pick in this team's history, going back to their days as the Vancouver Grizzlies from 95 to 01, before they relocated to Memphis and have ever since been the Memphis Grizzlies. He had 2 good seasons under his belt before injuries and his weight caught up to him. I mean, 2 great seasons isn't that great, but for the Grizzlies' history, who only had really one excellent era, it's worth acknowledging. Now moving on to the next one. Another one is Tony Allen. You guys remember him from the grit and grind era of the Grizzlies in the mid-2010s. He was originally a member of the Celtics with Pierce, Rondo, Ray Allen, Garnett, and company, but he seemed to get overshadowed. He felt like he was worthy of a bigger role. He went to the Memphis Grizzlies, and he took on that role during the grit and grind era in the 2010s. He was the key defensive player, multi-time defensive man of the year, typically averaging about 5. One season averaged out 5 steals. He was that guy. He was one of the main guy on their defense from that era. And he played a role in them being championship contenders out west in the 2010s. Now, he wasn't the best player in Grizzlies history. He wasn't the best player of that era, but certainly a player worthy of an honorable mention. Tony Allen was a good player from the 2010s. Now, on to the top 5 itself. We're going to go with number 5. Kind of a bittersweet tale through the Grizzlies' history. Shareef Adbul-Raheem. Now, he was drafted in the 96 draft class as the 3rd pick in that loaded draft class. Originally, he was a member of the Vancouver Grizzlies. He'd had several seasons where he was averaging over 20 points, and he was the guy that could have been the first real face of the franchise. Unfortunately, injuries and the Vancouver-run Grizzlies front office before Jerry West took over when it moved to Memphis didn't exactly have the best basketball insight. It didn't have a great idea how to put a team together. And that unfortunately ruined the chance of them building a team around Shareef Adbul-Raheem. But Raheem himself was a good player for that time he was with the Grizzlies. And like I said, it's kind of a shame he couldn't fully stay healthy and that the team didn't really build around him, wasn't built to succeed, but he was a good player for that time and certainly worthy of acknowledgement, typically averaging over 20 points a game. Now, he didn't get that many All-Star nods, but he was good for his era, though. But like I said, you got to remember, All-Star nods are part of popularity contests. But, sometimes snubs happen, but hey, Adbul-Raheem was one of those first good players for the Grizzlies, certainly worthy of acknowledging. Now, moving on to number 4. As of right now, number 4, I got Morant. Drafted in 2019. Now he's at number 4 because he's still in the early stage of his career. We come back to this a few years from now and could easily work his way up this list. But as of now, he's the number 4 guy. He was, so far he was Rookie of the Year. He led the Grizzlies to several playoff appearances. Unfortunately, he's had his off-the-court issues that cost him to miss some time. 2022-23. And then the 23-24, he missed time due to injuries. But when healthy, he's still one of the best guards in today's game. And he helped lead the Grizzlies back to the postseason. Even that 2022-23 season, he led them to the number 2 seed out west. And unfortunately, they fell short to the Lakers. But so far, the Grizzlies went from being an irrelevant team that was in rebuilding phase to being a contender in large part due to Morant. There's a few other young pieces there as well, but Morant's the main guy leading the way now. And so far, he's managed to already stand out as one of those all-time great Grizzlies. If he stays with the team, he could easily work his way up to the greatest Grizzly of all time one day. Now, moving on to number 3. Number 3, I got Mike Conley Jr., another good role player in that grit and grind Grizzlies era. Now, he was a key part of the rebuild from the Pau Gasol era that was butchered into the grit and grind era. He was drafted in 2007. He stayed there after the trade, where Powell got traded to the Lakers, with the drafting of Marc Gasol. Now, Conley was, he was a good role player. He had a few seasons where he averaged over 20. He played a role in those Grizzlies teams in the early 2010s, pulling off the upset over the Spurs in 2011 as the 8th seed, making it to the conference finals in 2013, and being a contender. But I put Conley at 3 because of his longevity with the team. He was with the Grizzlies basically till about 2022-23 when he got traded to the Timberwolves, I'm not mistaken. But Mike Conley, for his longevity and his contributions as a role player, certainly worth being acknowledged. Now on to number 2, another guy from that grit and grind era, Zach Randolph. He was a great defensive presence for them, good on offense. It's averaged over 20 a few times, averaged over 10 rebounds a game. Through most of his run with the Grizzlies, played a role in, like I said, that upset over the Spurs in 2011 and that conference finals run in 2013 where they fell short to the Spurs. Not to mention they pulled off an upset over the, at the time, defending conference champions Oklahoma City Thunder in that year as well. But I still got him as the number 2 guy. Number 1 guy, greatest Grizzly of all time. I already used Pau Gasol for the Lakers, honorable mention. I'm not going to use him twice, but that's going to go to his brother Marc. When the Grizzlies were on the downswing, he took over as the lead guy. Now, the knock against him will be that he was averaging over 20 a game in an era where he didn't have many good centers. And yes, that is true, but he was one of the best centers of his time, even if that was during a weaker era for big men. Marc Gasol was one of the better guys of his time, and he was the leader for that Grizzlies team in that era that I keep referring to. Now you're starting to notice the theme. The Grizzlies had that one great grit and grind era. They might have another great one that's currently in the works. Outside of that, they've had some few flashes in between. But out of all the Grizzlies, Marc Gasol stands out as the greatest. He was a multi-time All-Star, Defensive Player of the Year, and the leader of that era. And for that, I consider him the greatest Memphis Grizzly of all time. Now, Gasol did eventually get traded to the Raptors. He got to win a ring there as compensation for the fact they fell short during his time with Memphis. But this is about his time with the Memphis Grizzlies. Easily stands out as the greatest Grizzly player of all time. Led the best era of their franchise history to date. Simple as that. But you guys can comment, let me know your top 5 Memphis Grizzlies of all time. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe for more content. And for the next installment, tomorrow we're going to talk about the Miami Heat. So stay tuned.